My mother was forced into a lie that nearly killed her. She married a man her parents chose to bury, a shame they refused to name. I was born into that lie, my very skin a betrayal. When my real father returned, silence turned to escape, their lifeline letters carved into headstones. Last week, David Whitmore was sentenced to 25 years for attempted murder. His reign ended. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Back then, interracial love was a crime of the soul in our town. My mother kissed Caleb Monroe in the dark behind the textile mill. Her brothers found out and nearly killed him. Her parents locked her away, then married her to David Whitmore within days. David wore his cruelty behind a polished smile. My mother never screamed, just burned dinners and wrote in silence. Her prayers were whispers folded inside pillow seams. My mother used to walk with Caleb near the cemetery, where no one dared to look too closely. She traced names on stones, memorized dates like maps. After she was forced to marry David, she returned there alone. That's where she left letters buried beneath a rosebush. Caleb found them years later. I was born by then, already a secret in plain sight. My mother called it the Garden of the Unsaid. Each day grew colder in that house. David's voice was thunder wrapped in scripture. When he slammed the Bible down, we all knew pain followed. Lucille brought herbs and quiet warnings. Caleb worked night shifts, gathering money and courage. My mother hid bruises beneath Sunday dresses. She still left letters, tucked inside hymnals now. David's eyes started to linger too long on me. My mother started locking our bedroom door at night. The night air carried warnings. Jerome came by less, saying David questioned too much. Patricia stitched messages into dish towels. My mother kept Caleb's letters in a hollowed Bible. When David found one, he screamed for hours, pacing with a belt in his hand. He never hit her that night, just me. I didn't cry. That silence scared him. Lucille smuggled ointments. My mother stayed awake, watching doors like they breathed. Mrs. Washington knocked 3 times, always before dawn. She brought tea laced with something calming. My mother's hands still shook. Plans grew in whispered visits and silent nods. David became paranoid. He stopped going to work, watched us through mirrors. Caleb changed jobs to avoid suspicion. Mary, only 15, acted as lookout during our visits to the rose garden. She saw David once watching from behind the trees. We started preparing every night to run. Emma sent a letter from Detroit, said she'd make space for us. Her husband, James, had friends who could help. My mother cried silently while folding laundry. David started taking the truck's distributor cap with him each morning. Jerome built a tunnel in Mrs. Washington's cellar, but rain collapsed half of it. Caleb scouted train yards. Patricia taught me how to hide documents inside seams. My mother stopped humming altogether. Hope turned quiet. David brought home a shotgun, said it was for protection. He polished it every night, eyes never leaving us. My mother started writing goodbye letters. Ruth came by with baby clothes and sad eyes. She whispered about her own escape north. Willie distracted David with school troubles to buy us minutes. The air inside our house was suffocating. My mother kissed me longer each night, like she was memorizing my face. The night David exploded, thunder cracked outside like a warning. He found one of Caleb's new letters inside my doll. He dragged my mother by her hair. I grabbed a knife from the drawer. Caleb burst through the back door with Jerome. David fired. The blast grazed Caleb's arm. Jerome tackled him. I stood frozen, knife still raised. My mother wrapped herself around me. The room reeked of gunpowder and blood and sweat. Deputies came within minutes, but not for help. They cuffed Caleb and Jerome, left David untouched, said it was a domestic matter. My mother's lip bled, her eye swollen. She screamed that Caleb saved us. A deputy told her to hush or lose her child. I clutched her dress, shaking. They took Caleb away. My mother stared blankly at David. He smiled as if nothing had happened. That night, she didn't sleep at all. Mrs. Washington led us through her cellar in silence. The tunnel wasn't ready, but we had no time left. My mother carried me on her back. Patricia and Ruth waited at the other end. Hidden beneath blankets in a wagon, we emerged scratched, filthy, terrified. David's voice echoed through the woods, calling my mother's name. She never turned. Ruth whispered prayers as we rode toward the safe house. My mother never looked back. James Blackwell opened his home like it was a church. Emma handed us dry clothes, fed us soup like it could erase terror. My mother cried only once when she saw Caleb's shirt, bloodied but intact. James had pulled strings to get him released early. He arrived 3 days later, limping but alive. When my mother touched his face, it was like years dissolved. I watched their hands intertwine like they never broke. David filed charges, accused us of kidnapping and sedition. A trial followed, in a town that never cared for truth, but Mary testified 15, fearless and with photographs. Lucille brought letters, timestamps, bruises. Pastor Elijah spoke about sanctuary and fear. Caleb spoke with tears, not rage. My mother never looked at David once. The judge dismissed most charges. David was furious, but something cracked that day. His mask slipped, and everyone saw the monster. David followed us even after the trial. Emma spotted him near the safe house twice. That's when James arranged transport to Canada. Ruth volunteered to take me, posing as my mother. Caleb stayed behind to finalize documents. My mother cut her hair, burned old clothes, and vanished into night with Patricia. I rode north wrapped in Ruth's coat. Her heartbeat was my lullaby. My mother's final gift was freedom she never tasted. We thought David would give up, but he bribed a border agent. Ruth and I were nearly turned away at the Canadian checkpoint. Then a nurse recognized Ruth from church, an old friend who now worked immigration security. She vouched for us, risked her job to let us pass. That night, Ruth cried for the first time. I held her hand tight. The real danger had never just been David, it was the network that protected him. Back home, James was arrested under false charges. Emma fled with Patricia to protect the remaining documents. Caleb was ambushed one night, left unconscious near the tracks. Lucille found him just in time. David's allies in the sheriff's office were cleaning house, erasing witnesses. That's when Jerome leaked everything, documents, testimonies, even recordings, to a black-run newspaper in Atlanta. It spread fast. The pressure grew. The walls David built to protect himself began to crumble publicly. An anonymous envelope reached a state senator, copies of Caleb's bruises. Court files, photos of David drinking with deputies off duty. Emma's cousin worked at the senator's office. Within weeks, an inquiry began. The town's police chief was suspended. Deputies faced review. David was arrested for obstruction and assault with a deadly weapon. This time, there was no loophole. Lucille stood in the courtroom, her voice steady. We remember, and now, so will the law. My mother re-emerged after 2 years, hair streaked silver, eyes sharper than ever. She testified anonymously, voice modulated in behind a screen. Still, everyone knew it was her. David broke down in court, screaming about betrayal and lies. The jury watched in silence. Every scar she mentioned matched medical records and testimony. Her final words, he didn't just beat me, he buried me. I had to dig myself out. The courtroom stood still, breathless. David's sentencing made headlines across the South. 25 years without parole. But the twist wasn't his punishment, it was what came after. Survivors from other counties began speaking out. Lucille organized safe houses across 3 states. Caleb trained volunteers in document protection. Ruth started a fund for survivors needing legal aid. What began with my mother's escape became a movement. Pastor Elijah renamed their network Hartman's Promise. My mother cried hearing that. She finally felt seen. In Toronto, Ruth and I are safe. But I miss them. My mother, Caleb, Lucille. Letters came monthly, smuggled in baked goods or blankets. One day, a young girl knocked on our door. Mary, now 17, had crossed the border on her own. She brought photos. A necklace my mother once wore, and news Lucille had cancer. Ruth collapsed into a chair. I clutched that necklace, suddenly aware of everything we had gained and everything we'd lost. Lucille wrote us one final letter. Don't mourn me. Build something, she said. Ruth organized a vigil in our Toronto backyard. Candles lit up the cold night. Survivors spoke names and stories. My mother's voice played on tape recorded before she vanished again. I survived for her, and for those you'll never hear. Mary held my hand tight. That night, the wind carried hope. We weren't ghosts. We were history, living, grieving, still breathing. A stranger came to our door, a journalist named Nadine. She'd traced the network from Georgia to Toronto. She wanted to tell our story, but safely. My mother agreed. Anonymously, Nadine stayed 2 weeks, interviewing quietly, cross-checking facts. She cried during playback of Lucille's vigil. Months later, an article appeared, Hartman's Promise, the Silent Underground. It went viral. Survivors sent messages from around the world. My mother read them all, one by one, without speaking. Emma and James arrived in Toronto one rainy spring. They'd crossed legally, carrying official records and forged IDs. Patricia came later with Willie. The reunion was quiet, tearful. My mother didn't say much, just held them all. Caleb arrived months later, limping, thinner but alive. They built a new house together, modest and hidden by trees. My mother planted roses in the front yard. Every year since, they bloom in April, the same month she ran. David's name disappeared from the newspapers. But not from memory. Survivors who'd once feared him testified against others like him. Hartman's Promise expanded now with shelters, legal clinics, and a memorial wall in Atlanta. My mother attended its opening but stayed behind the crowd. She traced Lucille's name. Caleb's bruises etched into sculpture. That night, she whispered, "We won't forget." I saw her smile, not in triumph, but in peace. We had turned survival into legacy. Mary took over the network at 19, sharp, fearless, and brilliant. She modernized communication, added encryption, and built an app coded in Caleb's memory. Ruth became its face, appearing on panels, guiding survivors. My mother stayed silent but active, planting gardens at every safe house. They called them Hartman beds. Survivors said they bloomed fast, stubbornly, even in poor soil. That year, a rosebush bloomed in January. My mother said it meant someone made it out. A package arrived from Georgia, inside a torn Bible page, David's confession scribbled in the margins, and a letter unsigned. It detailed bribes, threats, names. We traced the handwriting to a former deputy dying of cancer. He wanted to clear his conscience. My mother didn't flinch. She simply folded the page, lit a match, and watched it burn in the fireplace. We already knew, she said. I don't need his truth to validate my pain. One summer evening, Pastor Elijah visited Toronto. He brought a quilt hand-stitched from pieces of survivors' clothes, notes, and prayer cloths. My mother ran her hands over every square, reading memories in thread. He asked her to bless the next generation of safe house leaders. She nodded but said little. That night, she added her square, a scrap from the dress she wore the night we escaped. So they know what flight feels like, she whispered. Ruth grew ill that fall. Hospital visits became routine. My mother brought flowers every time, always roses. One night, Ruth grabbed her hand and said, "You saved me too." When Ruth passed, my mother stayed silent for days. Then she gathered us all, Mary, Emma, James, Caleb, and said, "We keep going for her." Ruth's funeral was held in the same Toronto park where she'd once hidden me as a baby. Her grave reads, "Safe Harbor, forever vigilant." Emma opened a cafe in Toronto, called the Garden of the Unsaid. Survivors worked there, shared poetry, hosted healing circles. My mother rarely went inside, but she sat outside under the rose archway. Children played. Laughter spilled from windows. One day, a girl asked about the name. I watched my mother kneel beside her. "Because some stories are buried too deep for words," she said, "but they still bloom." The girl nodded, and hugged her. Years later, my mother stood on a stage in Montreal, accepting an award she never sought. The crowd applauded, cameras flashed. She said only one thing, "Every name you don't know is why I'm here." Then she placed the medal around Mary's neck. Mary cried openly. Caleb clapped the loudest. That night, we returned home to blooming roses and flickering candles. My mother whispered, "We turned graves into gardens," and I believed her with my whole heart. I often walk the garden paths with Ruth's scarf around my neck. Each bloom reminds me of someone lost, someone saved. My mother calls them whispers from the past. Sometimes I kneel beside a rose and tell it a story of escape, of fire, of hope. Caleb watches from the porch, a book in his lap. I once feared I'd become a shadow of this history, but now, I live loudly, for all of them. Mary and I walk together now, visiting schools and shelters. We teach what silence cost us. She carries a photo of Lucille in her wallet. I carry a ring, my mother's freedom ring. When children ask if we're family, I always say yes, not by blood, but by survival. We are the after, what happens when the fire doesn't win. And every time I speak, I know I'm echoing voices that were once silenced. Now, we host a yearly remembrance under the Rose Arch. Names are whispered, not shouted. Children draw chalk hearts on the ground. My mother smiles more. Caleb cooks for everyone. And for a moment, it feels like victory doesn't need trumpets, just presence, safety, and hands held without fear. We made it. I plant a new rose every year. Each one has a name. Lucille, Ruth, Patricia. One day, I'll plant one for my mother. She says not yet. Her hands are still strong, still building. When that day comes, I'll whisper. We continue because she didn't just escape. She transformed everything. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to check out more stories on my channel.